Spartan Nation, what's going on? Cue the woodshed. I'm Ken, the super cool Spartan. My brother Brian, the super mad Spartan. And we have MSU sports reporting royalty here on the podcast.
I don't know about
that. Yes, Mr. Chris Solari from the Detroit Free Press here joining us. Man, Chris, we are big fans, always been big fans of your writings, you know, from the Detroit Free Press. We love how you cover the MSU sports in general, not this football, but MSU sports in general.
Thanks.
So it is an honor to have you on the show here, sir.
Well, I'm glad to join you guys, and it's good to be between hot and cold. A little running hot, super mad, and a little super cool. It's like, you got to be right in the middle of it, right?
Yeah, yes, sir, yes, sir. So let's go hop right into it, man. So, first, I gotta shout out my man Kevin Shaw. He's the one that hooked us up here. Yeah, K Shaw. You know, thanks for hooking us up here. And me, Chris, and K Shaw, we're all at MSU at the same time, which I didn't know, Chris, until Kevin Shaw had mentioned it.
Yeah.
And I remember when we interviewed him, it was last year. He was talking about his days at the State News and how you and him broke all of these big time stories at our time on campus. So,
Kevin was my first sports editor at the State News when I was an intern, and Evage James before him was his sports editor, and Evage was my direct boss, and so a lot of real tight knit people that have come through there, like Dave Burkett, who covers the Lions for us at the Free Press. Yes. I was his sports editor. My buddy Brian Hedger, who covers the Columbus Blue Jackets down at the Columbus Dispatch, was there at that time. Just Joe Rexroad came
I remember
through there.
Joe.
We had
Rexroad.
And I mean Jamel.
Oh yeah.
Jamel Hill. Jamel and I started at Michigan State the same time, and a semester apart at the State News. And so a lot of great reporters that have. Charles Robinson, another guy, I can't forget Charles. Charles was at Yahoo, and he covers the NFL, and he's done tons of great investigative work with like Nevin Shapiro at Miami and all kind of stuff. So, I mean, it runs deep, man. I mean, and a lot of that stems from your boy K Shaw too. He was at ESPN. He was now doing the journey and doing such great stuff off sports too. I mean, I don't know if you got a chance to see some of his movies that, documentaries that he's done.
Yeah, I agree. His sports stuff and his non-sports movies have been fantastic. So I'll have to ask this question, and this is probably Brian more so our era that me and Chris were at MSU. Now, when you started there, Chris, did you start on trimesters or when semester started?
I was right at the beginning of semesters. So the fall of '93 was my first semesters. And I think it maybe the year before it had shifted over.
Yeah, that was my first year at Michigan State when they switched 2 semesters. So
yeah, I never got to experience the pit.
I haven't either.
Everything that all my enrollment was digital and on computers, and early internet days back then when
they had computer labs at the Union Center.
I actually worked at the Union Computer Lab. That was one of my work study jobs.
Wow.
First time that I actually saw the quote unquote World Wide Web. Someone showed me I can't even remember what a music video on there. I'm like, wait a minute, where are you getting this? Like, oh, it's this thing called the World Wide Web. And I mean, look at this. I mean, that's 25, 30 years ago now. Actually, probably 30 years ago. And here we are now being able to talk and do different things because of the World Wide Web that is is everything now. I mean, sports has changed dramatically because of it. It started, those first things were a lot of movies, a lot of music, and then all of a sudden sports took hold, somewhere in like 94, 95. I remember doing some stuff early, some stringing work for ABC Sports when they had just launched their web stuff, maybe in like 95 or 96. Like the first year that I covered Michigan State football full time was 95, Nick Saban's first year.
Okay.
And in fact, that fall, I also had coaching basketball with a first year basketball coach by the name of Tom Izzo. He was still teaching that class. So yeah, it's getting to see all that change, from Judd Heathcote and George Perlis at the end of their tenures there to kind of the modern era, I think you could say, of Michigan State athletics. Like, there's a real era divide right when we were in college. And, for better or for worse, I think in a lot of different ways. But, you can't argue the success that Izzo has had, because I think a lot of that has kept Michigan State not just relevant, but ahead of most athletic departments in the country because of the success his program has had.
Most definitely. So, Chris, what dorms you stay in at MSU back in the day?
I was 2 years in Emmons. So 93, 94, 94, 95. And we kept a second year in Emmons for the Fire and Ice year. It was a big reason that's the so Kevin Shaw hooked me up.
Eric Snow, baby.
with the BTN had their KISS special for when Respert started the tradition, and that was the one year I had season tickets, and we intentionally kept our dorm assignment in Emmons because it was such a close walk to Breslin, and we camped out at Jennison Fieldhouse. This is pre-Izzo camp out, right? I mean, there were maybe 15, 20 people in the fall of 94 that stayed overnight on the concrete steps at Jennison when the ticket office was over there. And you got to pick your seats that you wanted. And this was when Heathcote had the Judd's Jungle section. So they were right in the middle, but we took one section over, and I can remember exactly why we did it. We did it one section over and 7 rows up so we could see over the media tables that were on the sidelines at that time, so we could see the sideline and see when guys were out of bounds.
Wow.
And Respert shot over Michael Finley was right in front of us at that spot. So it was, you couldn't have asked for a better moment.
Right.
In time
right. I remember that. Wow. I remember that. Oh boy.
Yeah. So then I spent one more year at Wonders after that. I did 3-year tour duty in the dorms, which was good. I mean, it was, it didn't bother me because being from out of state, it didn't matter much whether I was on or off campus. I knew people that were going to be in both. And my roommate actually from Emmons and I lived together for a couple other years. And working at the State News, there was a lot of dragging it out because of just the time commitment that went into that. When you're trying to, I mean, in a lot of ways, the kids and, guys and girls that come through the State News are treating that in a lot of ways like internships, because it is the best. It was at the time the best practical experience you were going to get.
Right.
And so doing 4, 5, 6 years wasn't abnormal, because you were working sometimes 40 to 60 hour weeks on top of going to class. So when I did editor in chief, which is by far the toughest and most rewarding thing that I did in college, running a staff of about 60 to 80 people and, $1 million budget. I mean, you don't get that.
Wow.
That kind of experience. Yeah.
Great experience.
Excellent.
Yeah. I mean, it just, that's changed considerably now too, but at the time that was fantastic. So I spent some time around, it's now I'm over 30 years now covering, with little stops here and there. I covered Virginia Tech, Michael Vick's year when they went to the national title game. That was Dave Burkett and I mentioned him earlier. We were both down in Virginia at the same time, at the same paper, right after college. And then I covered some Redskins stuff and some preps in DC area, and then back to Lansing. And then I spent 6 years in South Dakota covering South Dakota State and their move up to Division I. So before coming back to Lansing, and 10 years in Lansing, and now 10 years in Detroit.
Wow, man, that's great, man. That is excellent.
Quite the ride.
Right. That's a great ride. Yes. Yeah,
it is. You get getting to see a lot of different parts of the country too. That's what a life.
Definitely. Yeah, so I stayed in Holden with, that's where I met Kevin Shaw. Stayed in Holden for about 3 years and moved off campus. Brian, I think you stayed in Holden for a minute too, during your tenure.
I stayed in Holden for 2 years, and I ended up in Spartan Village. I don't know if Spartan Village is even around anymore. But
oh man,
I had 2 years in Holden.
That's changed so much down there. I mean, it's funny because the new IM building that's going up right across from Breslin. After the basketball game the other night, I looked over and it was all lit up and it's starting to come to fruition. And it just looks and feels totally different on that corner of Shaw and Harrison now. And then you keep going down Harrison. It's like, once you get past the train tracks, I think Spartan Village is on the other side of the train tracks down there. And it's just, I think it's still there, but it's much smaller. Like Cherry Lane is gone. That's now.
Cherry Lane. Oh,
yeah.
Man.
I mean, it's amazing. I think the crazy thing about coming here from out of state and kind of hitting that time and place in the 90s when Michigan State was making that transition from, its own East Lansing and own little town to kind of, by the time I left here in 99, it started to become a little more corporatized. You saw stuff like Bagel Fragel get replaced by Brugger's, and you saw a lot of the little CD stores. There's still one or two that are left, but there used to be a lot more. And then Tower Records came in and ran them all out. Well, Tower Records is gone. I remember all of that. And now East Lansing went
from my time period.
and Ken, you'll remember this. You had Top Dog, and you had all these places that you go underground for. Then that's where a lot of the place B-Dubs was underground.
Yes,
in East Lansing.
B-Dubs back
now
in the day.
everything in East Lansing is now like Ann Arbor and built up into a vertical.
That's true.
It's changed so much in 30 years. I guess everywhere is like that, but when you're in a college town and the ages of the kids don't change, but you're growing up there, it's a different vibe.
I agree with you.
It really is.
With you.
I can imagine.
I agree with you.
Yeah.
So, Chris, my brother and I, we were having this conversation, and I'm going to let him take the lead on it because Brian is excellent at finding different topics and theories, whether they're conspiracy theories or just different things. Brian's not I call Brian, he's not the average MSU fan. He covers a lot of the message boards. He rewatches the games.
I'm a fanatic.
Yeah, he rewatches the games like he's a coach. He analyzes all the different moves and stuff here. So Brian has a very interesting topic that we wanted to include you on here to get your take on it. So I'm going to pass the mic over to you, Mr. Super Mad Spartan, so you can introduce this topic.
All right.
My wife, thank you. So, we're in year 2 of Jonathan Smith as being a football coach, and it's not looking so high. I'd say most of the fan base is pretty much out on Jonathan Smith. And if you would have told me this when he was hired, that 2 years in, I'm like, there's no way 2 years in that we would be right here. And I'd be one of the people like, it just doesn't seem like it's working. And so it begs the question of, it can't all be Jonathan Smith's fault. So how did we get to this point, basically halfway through his second season as the football coach, that everybody's kind of like, he has to go?
Well,
and that's kind of the consensus amongst the fan base.
It's a great question. And, and it's more than just of how is the program at this point, to this point, because I think you got to look, like, if you want to start a starting point, I think a good starting point is the Alabama loss in the college football playoff. And they lost that game to Alabama, and you're right there. You're right there on the doorstep. Then the 2016 season happens. You know, 3-9. Everyone remembers, unfortunately, the way that season unraveled. And then they had the bounce back year in 17 after all the drama, off field stuff, and that I think tore at D'Antonio a little bit. This is pre-Nasser stuff, because I do think there was a Nasser component that, right or wrong, the football program got dragged in it. But that 17 year, they have the bounce back year. And the thing that has been consistent from an on-field perspective since is they have not had good line play on the offense and on the defensive line. The end of that D'Antonio era, his last 2 years, they were not able to run the ball. And they tried moving some things around, going to pistol, going a little more hurry up when they quote unquote shuffled the deck chairs in the Titanic with the staff and moved Brad Salem into offensive coordinator. And they didn't have a lot of time to really kind of build upon that. Salem and Memphis has done a good job down there the last few years, but that D'Antonio sudden retirement didn't help. I think something that gets really overlooked in all of this, and not enough people really sit and empirically look at this, but when all the Nasser stuff went down, when Mark Hollis resigned, Lou Anna Simon resigned, there was a move to put Bill Beekman in the athletic director chair, at first on an interim basis and then a full-time basis. Well, that set the program back more than I think people want to admit.
Oh, okay.
And more than people really kind of understand, because you were left in that 2018, 19, 20 window with an athletic director who'd never worked in athletics. And really his only leadership positions up to that point, he was working for the board of trustees as a secretary, but he had run the MSU Alumni Association.
Oh, okay.
And that was a move that John
experience.
So that was a move that John Engler made as interim president, and then before he left, the interim position was forced out, made Bill Beekman permanent. So when it comes time for Mark D'Antonio's retirement, it couldn't have been handled worse. You got Mark D'Antonio at the end of that 2019 season. They win the Pinstripe Bowl over Wake Forest, which had Kenneth Walker. We'll get to that. And so D'Antonio's, to me, one of the lines that really sets this apart is D'Antonio in Yankee Stadium telling us, this is the baseline. The baseline for this program is win 6 games, get to a bowl game, minimum finish above 500. That's our baseline. We've established that over 13 years. He had 2 years under 500. One of them was the Rather Hall fight year.
Yep.
When the bowl game against Texas Tech, they had moved all the players around, and that's where Keith Nickel became a wide receiver, and really probably set up some of the success to come after that. And then they had the 3-9 season in 2016, but he was consistent. He made 12 bowl games in 13 years, which was unheard of at Michigan State. A lot of the consistency that Tom Izzo built in basketball with the NCAA tournament run, Mark D'Antonio built with bowl games. Well, the way that was handled, that transition, couldn't have been more ham-handed. I mean, he could have, a good athletic director would have got a feel on it, found out if D'Antonio, if he wasn't going to come back the next year, let's make the move after the bowl game. We'll get somebody in. We'll get, if you have Luke Fickell set up, we'll hurry this thing through. But it got sucked into board politics. I don't think the board was as much to blame as maybe some people think, because I think one of the things that they wanted to make sure is D'Antonio's pushing Luke Fickell, but you have to have, at a university position, you have to have an equitable hiring process. There's no Rooney Rule per se, but there are university and state regulations of the candidate pool that you need to have legitimate candidates. And that hiring process was still set up after D'Antonio resigned, which again, abrupt, right? A very savvy person in athletics would have handled that a lot better, and made sure that wasn't going to happen. And he got his retention bonus and retired the day before signing day. Mind you, I was buying a car that day, so that was fun. I'm literally pulled up to the dealership to buy my car, as he sent his tweet that he was retiring, which I had kind of got a tip that he was coming. But I mean, that's the day before signing day. And that process had to be expedited to keep a class together at that point and really kind of build off it. So D'Antonio resigns. They've got a 2-week window essentially to get something done. The process was set up to go out to the West Coast, interview Robert Saleh out in San Francisco before he took the Jets job. And but the consensus thought was at that time he was going to be an NFL head coach. This was a courtesy interview. Okay. He was going to help them with a lot of that. And honestly, at that point, I think some people thought that he was going to be the Lions' next coach, and then they ended up hiring Dan Campbell, which worked out pretty well for them. So then from there, they went to Colorado. So San Francisco to Colorado, interviewed Mel Tucker. Mel Tucker, after they left, had told the Colorado people, "I'm staying." You know, he was meeting with Colorado donors to kind of smooth them over. And then the charter plane went to Cincinnati with Luke Fickell, met with him, left him with an offer that he turned down. And again, a veteran athletic director wouldn't have been put in that position, not in that short a period and everything else. So, you know, I think some of it unjustly gets thrown on Alan Haller's feet, but a lot of that comes back to
message boards.
Yeah, but a lot of that all comes back to that Bill Beekman time period. And then when Fickell pulls out, they've got to double back and they've got to up the money to go to get Mel Tucker. Because he had just said, well, I'm not leaving. Well, throw him more money, and then he will. Now you've got a sitting head. So you got a sitting head coach that comes in, but only with 1 year of head coaching experience. I don't know how much of due diligence was done properly in the background checks for Tucker, but clearly didn't really have much resolve, you know, as we saw a few years later. But he was able to parlay the donors and get them to get him a bigger contract with that big year, that 11-2 year, the Peach Bowl year, you know, that great Very game against Michigan. I mean, remember, I don't think that Michigan game that year in 2021 was, of my time, 30 plus years covering Michigan State, the most electric atmosphere that I've ever been a part of at any event on campus. And part of that, I think, is because it came right out of the COVID year.
Right.
And people were just looking for that. But also because both of those teams were really good at that point. And it still comes down to the same things that were an issue in the end of that Mark D'Antonio era and the things that are still an issue right now for Jonathan Smith. How and why did Michigan State win that game against Michigan and go 11-2 that year and do everything? Look at Kenneth Walker's yards after contact. That was a one-man game. I voted for him for the Heisman. He got my Heisman vote.
It was so sad he didn't even get invited.
I know.
He was really one of the best players.
I know. I mean, all you had to do was look at that Michigan game, see how much of what that guy did in that game on his own for those 5 touchdowns, through contact, at the line of scrimmage, around contact, over it, under it. I mean, the guy was, and it wasn't the blocking. And, you know, the blocking was, and you saw it the next year, and you saw it the year after that. The line has been, I don't want to say atrocious, but it has not been Big Ten level. That's ultimately where Michigan State,
way to put it.
I mean, it really is, because, I mean, I don't want to throw, there's some good kids on that line, and there are a few guys that have gone on to bigger things in their careers in that period. There have been a lot of injuries that I think have affected it. There's been a lot of depth issues. I think Smith, when he came in after Tucker left, I mean, they lost. The one thing that Mel Tucker did identify is they needed to rebuild the lines. Him and his offensive line coach really kind of built those lines.
Alabama now. I can't think of his name.
Alabama. And so they rebuilt that line. Well, all that talent left. Gino Vandermark followed him to Alabama. And Kevin Wigginton was a good dude. He had a big game in Illinois in that 23 season, a couple of big blocks. He left. He's at Illinois now. You know, a couple other guys left that line, and Spencer Brown went to Oklahoma. So they had a lot of talent, And Vandermark, I think, was kind of the big one because he went through spring ball. And, so the team that Jonathan Smith inherited, even the guys that he brought back with like Simeon Barrow and Derek Harmon, those guys left. He thought you're getting one team, and because of the way the portal is and because of the way, how is that happening, right? Well, is he getting the funding to keep those guys? That's something that only the people involved in writing the checks and not writing the checks know right now. So you can sabotage a coach by not writing checks these days if you don't get your way, which, right or wrong, that's where we're at. Now. It really is. And I mean, I don't know how it's going to change, with the shift from the NIL collectives to this revenue sharing model. I mean, how much more is going to change if the Big Ten takes this capital infusion, the private equity deal, which there's going to be a lot of pushback. There's already a lot of pushback at the higher education. And I think I saw something today that the trustees groups that lead these universities around the country are saying, you need to rethink this. And there are a number of Big Ten administrators on that panel. Maryland, UCLA. There are more than a few that are beyond the USC and Michigan group. I mean, Wisconsin has someone on there.
They presented like it's only Michigan and USC that are against it.
Well, this is the rest of college sports that are pushing back, and the rest of the colleges around the country that you cannot sell off governmental entities to private equity, and that's going to be a major issue. And if it does end up coming to fruition and you see that coupled with the fact that these athletes are getting paid, I think you're going to see a lot more pushback at the state and congressional level to start taxing these universities' athletic departments.
Yes.
They've operated completely tax-free. And why are they getting all these donations? Because they're tax write-offs. If that goes away, the whole model that you've thought you were building blows up.
Oh, for sure.
And you're now the NFL.
Start over again.
You're now the NFL. And you know what? This is the thing that I've never heard one person ask anywhere. Where are the NFL, NBA, Major League Baseball, and NHL in supporting and supplementing these colleges that are their minor leagues, that are their free developmental minor leagues? In the NFL's case, they're only developmental minor league. You don't hear them talking about that.
No,
right?
You don't.
No, they don't want to get rid of it. It works
right. So, I mean, and that's the existential question that I think administrators at the college level, state governments are going to need to answer that. The federal government's going to need to answer that. And someone's going to need to kind of step in here with the athletic people and say, what's our mission anymore? Are we a private business within a public entity? Because that's what they're trying to be right now.
Yes.
And, you talk to coaches, I think Jonathan Smith got in coaching for the right reasons, much like Tom Izzo got in coaching for the right reasons. They're there to, and I asked him about this a couple of weeks ago before the Minnesota game, just kind of give me we ask Izzo this question all the time, give me your overview of what your profession is right now. And that was something that he brought up. He's like, I got in it to help young men through this part of their lives, to get them to that next level, whether it be professionally in the sport, professionally outside of sports, professionally on the field, professionally in the sport off the field, or whatever life might take you. You're building men, and you're building and I think the women's coaches are the same. Where are we with that anymore? Nobody really knows. And I think as a general fan base, I want to ask, I'll throw it back at you guys. Where are you with your interest in college sports right now? Because you don't have the 4 years to build and learn who these guys are, the 5 years to kind of develop the relationships and have these guys go through what we went through in college, in the place that we went through for 4, 5, sometimes 6, sometimes 8 years for some people that I know, but we're not going to mention.
I can answer that because as someone who's followed the career, like I mentioned earlier, it makes it tough to follow the sport, because there was a time in Michigan State, when they're rolling, I could name the 3 and 4 deep and know their stories, because they've been there for a while. Now I really I don't follow recruiting like I used to at all, because you never know. Every season, someone's going to leave, someone's, know who's going to stay. especially with Michigan State, how their the football program has been trending. It seems like we're going to end up being like a feeder school. We're going to have every time we get somebody who's pretty good, good enough, somebody with more money, with bigger aspirations is going to come take our players, and it hurts the product overall, especially with the just as a fan base of being connected to the university. This college sports, that's the difference between college and pros to me is my connection to Michigan State. You know, I can drop a pro team, but Michigan State, that's in my blood. Like, you know, Ken's 12 years older than me. So for me, I grew up going to Michigan State. Going every Sunday, we used to go visit Ken at Holden. So that's how I ended up going to Holden because he was there.
Yeah.
And so those bonds that you build are being broken because of, you know, essentially the money of it. And I think everybody was on board with, you know, there's so much money being thrown around that the kids, the people who are playing it deserve some of it. But I don't think anybody had this was their it was what they had in mind when it came down to it.
Ken, I want to hear your opinion on this too, because we're about the same age, and I'm sure we came up through around the same points where you saw, you know, like the great Michigan State teams that we were in college with, you know, the Fab Five before that, and you know, a lot of like like you think about like Bettis and the Notre Dame teams, and like I think I go back to like the Tony Rice Notre Dame teams winning national titles. Like those are where your formal memories are built for college sports fandom.
Yeah.
You know, I grew up in Pittsburgh, and it's funny because John Calipari came in with Arkansas the other night, and John Calipari helped build some of the best Pitt teams that I could still name you the starting five from 85 to 88. You know, whether it be Curtis Aiken, you know, Jerome Lane, Demetrius Gore, Sean Miller, Charles Smith, you know, these were formative memories that I think kids now don't get, because there is so much, and it's not just the NIL, and it's not just the paying of players, and it's not just coaches leaving and going for different jobs. It's the fact that now players can up and leave and transfer whenever they want, however they want, and stay for as long as they want and go.
Yeah, I definitely agree with what you just said, Chris, and definitely agree with you, Brian. As you were talking, Chris, I remember growing up, you know, I really wasn't into college sports that much. I was more of a, you know, a kid who watched the pros, particularly in football. And it wasn't until I went to Michigan State where I developed my love for college football and for college basketball. And of course, it was the Spartans because, you know, that was the school that I went to. So, you know, watching, you know, MSU football, at that time, you know, while we were there, you know, we had some big wins against Michigan, and I remember the big slobber knocker games against Wisconsin, and I remember when Nick Saban first came, and he was kind of taking his lumps until he broke through his last year, and I remember, you know, hearing about, you know, like Plaxico Burress and you know, those type of players back in that time. So, you know, to Brian's point, you know, just watching all of these different players that you would read about from recruiting, and then they come on campus, and then you just kind of read about their development. Now it's like, okay, is this kid even going to stay that long? You know, and you really didn't get a chance to really see these teams' development. So now it's like, okay, because I think it was I forget who it was, but I remember hearing a coach saying, maybe it was Penny Hardaway who coaches Memphis. He said this, I think it was last year, that not only does he have to worry about getting in new players through recruiting, but he has to worry about like re-recruiting his current players and adding, you know, that check to their, you know, to their, you know, to the bottom line now. So yeah, it's so crazy. And then I know that when me and Brian we're talking about this too with Alan Haller, you know, how we basically got, you know, exit stage left. And then they brought in Jay Batt, and Jay Batt's an AD. You know, even AD's thing has changed because they're basically now just fundraisers for the most part. So It's like,
yes,
wow. I mean, it's changed a lot. I mean, it's crazy.
Yeah. And I thought they did a good job of identifying J-Bat. Give Kevin Guskowitz a lot of credit for making that ID early and making that connection many years ago. Because of that reason, because what he did at Georgia Tech in terms of becoming a fundraiser, what he did at Alabama, working as a second in command in the fundraising. He did that. He worked with Nick Saban. He's got all of that. He did that at East Carolina. And that is what the job has become now. I mean, yeah, you've got to oversee the sports, but you also have to delegate a little more too, which is ironic because before Mark Hollis resigned, he was getting grief for doing all these national committees, all these things that, with the NCAA basketball tournament, all these things that put Michigan State in the front of making the changes and at the decision-making tables. People locally were like, what are you worried about? Why aren't you worried about your softball program? Why aren't you worried about your hockey program? So you think about how that's changed in that 10-year window. But that was the other thing with J-Bat that was a kind of a shrewd hire, is that he was in the committees working on the House transition in the NIL structure. When they created the NIL Go, when they created the College Sports Commission, he was in that transition committee. So you got someone already at that table. And if you want to position yourself as Michigan State for the next level and for what's to come, having someone that's already in that decision-making process and bringing him on board, I thought was a shrewd decision. Now, his challenge, I think, is less about that, going out and making those external moves and making those external contacts to get Michigan State there. He's got to get everybody on the same page. I wrote that when they hired him in July or in June. You got to get to know your donor base. You got to get to know the highs and lows of what this university is. Because it's a unique setup. We were talking about this before we started recording. Michigan State is a different place, than a lot of different places. A lot of different athletic departments aren't based in a state capital. And a lot of the ones that are based in a state capital aren't necessarily they're usually the flagships, like Wisconsin. They're not what's quote unquote this, whatever it means anymore, the second school, or you're the state school, or whatever people want to say. I mean, Michigan State's been a Big Ten member now for 60, 70 years. This is you've been at the table very long time, right? Almost there with Michigan.
Right.
And, if you've ever read Arrogance and Scheming in the Big Ten, it's the best book I've ever read on Michigan State history. And it was done by a guy who's a Notre Dame grad.
Oh, wow.
He grew up in East Lansing. It is a fantastic book. And it's told from historic papers, which I think is important of the moment. But there's the emotions out of it. You see the way that these two schools have fought and scrapped, Michigan State fighting to get to that table, Michigan trying to fight to keep them away from that table for many, many years. And having those decision makers at that table is important. It's important to be what J-Bat says as a top 10 athletic department in the country. You have to be at that table, period. And he's already at that table. So, but football is going to drive it. And that's what's going to make this whole decision. And I do think, and I've said this, if you are a shrewd and fiscal athletic director, until something is adjudicated or until you decide to write a check for Mel Tucker to go away, that's hanging there. I said this, I thought Michigan State, all the publicity to fight Mel Tucker at that time for what happened, who it happened with, and which school it was, and all the history that has been there, that was a positive thing for the Michigan State. So we can't stand for this anymore. We cannot stand for any type of sexual improprieties against women. I thought that was they've been fighting it ever since in that respect. But you have to also ask yourself, that's $80 million. And I think they are in the right for it, but it's out of their hands. It's out of your hands. So you can't just write it off and say, we don't have to pay this until it's adjudicated. It's there. Or until you say, we're writing you a check for $10 million, drop your lawsuit. And that's still money that goes that you've got to take away then from if you are going to hire a different coach, or if you're going to bring another staff or pay buyouts. And it's a real complex mess that the Tucker thing just adds a different layer that Bat has to navigate, I think, and they may, maybe their general counsel feels differently, that it's all handled and they don't need to worry about it. But, you can't run that risk of having it out of your hands and then something change, in Discovery. You don't want to go to Discovery because, that could get ugly for every side involved. And who knows what happens. You don't want to play that game. And, but you also have to account for it if you're a fiscal manager and that you're working, with maybe not necessarily, you're not working with unlimited resources. I think that's probably the way to describe it. Michigan State's got resources, and I think they've got a good donor base. Who knows where they're at with Jay Batt, and who knows where Jay Batt is in trying to recruit funds for everything else. Because one of the things that I thought that he did at Georgia Tech was he recruited the corporate community really strong. Coca-Cola, I mean, that's right there in Atlanta. Yep. He built partnerships that were there. And, if Jay Batt's working to build some of the partnerships, is it individual donors, or is it the GMs? Is it the Fords? Is it all the big money that's around the state? I don't know. I mean, that's, that might be where the money is more so. I mean, we'll have to wait and see. But there's just a lot of layers, I think, that go along with where Michigan State is as a university, as an athletic department, that all trickles into the football program. So that's a long, circuitous way to get back to who knows what they're going to do.
It's the journey. That's what it is.
Yeah.
It is what it is. That's where we're at, and those are the facts on the table.
Yeah, and I'll say this: I like Jonathan Smith. I like his staff because I do think they are a little bit of a breath of fresh air from from football coaches in general. I think Smith has more of an NFL style approach. When it comes to injuries, when it comes to being open and frank about things, sometimes maybe to his detriment, because it's not all like you saw what PJ Fleck was doing. PJ Fleck still plays the college coach game. And, I think
that on the sideline.
Yeah. And, Jonathan's, I've said this too, maybe one of the things that Jonathan Smith has working against him is the blood boiling passion that the coaches before him had, whether it be D'Antonio, Narduzzi, Saban, Pertles. I mean, they were all, piss and vinegar kind of guys. and Jonathan Smith coaches like a quarterback to me. And it's like, you want to have some fire from, I get that. And I don't necessarily think that's a bad thing that people want, but I think you also want a calm, steady hand too. So it's, it's a little bit of here and, 6 of one, half dozen of another. I don't think he's lost the locker room. I think that those guys have, in that Minnesota game, were playing hard for him. They were playing hard for Rossi. Doesn't mean that there weren't mistakes made at the coaching level, because there were some grievous ones, and ultimately maybe that's what does them in is the coaching decisions. But again, what clay are they working with? What monetary aspect are you working with? Because right now, what we know about the financial landscape of college sports is the two areas where Michigan State is most deficient are the two areas that need the most money thrown at them, with edge rushers and offensive line. I mean, did they have the resources to deal with that, or did they use the resources to try and build outside? I don't know, because it's such a,
that's the question.
It's a non-transparent situation all the way across the board. You don't have players' unions and agents that are speaking above the board in a continuum that's regulated by a collective bargaining agreement. Everything's the Wild West compared to like pro sports, where it's all collectively bargained. So, until something gives with that you can, the rules are just going to be constantly evolving, and no one's going to have an idea of what's next, because it's like Izzo has complained about, it's going to all end up in court, because it is a governmental agency and it comes down to it, and it's all regulated by state and federal laws.
So it's an interesting topic to go through because and
Yeah.
speaking of Izzo, he had a great point as a couple weeks ago about the rules of letting people
Yeah.
come back from like the G League and play college basketball. Like it sounds so ridiculous, but that's what seems going to happen.
Right.
Yeah.
And that's all
I mean,
because, like you mentioned before,
I may have set him up on a little bit of a tee with that when I said, you're gonna call Magic. Maybe you can call. You mentioned Gary Harris. He's got a couple years of eligibility left. I mean, who's to say who can and can't do that now? I mean, that comes down to the courts because the NCAA has been toothless, and quite honestly, we're in this place because the NCAA, which again, everyone keeps talking the NCAA. The NCAA, there's a great article in Atlantic magazine, not The Athletic, Atlantic. This is about 15 years ago now. So before anything really hit the high water, one of the things that they said that has always stuck with me is the NCAA is essentially a house of cards because the NCAA is nothing but its member schools. Without the member schools, there's no NCAA. It's a governing agency created by and run by all of these schools that are part of it. So when people say you're violating NCAA rules, what you're violating is an agreement you've made with every other school that you compete against, not looking down Ann Arbor and saying that maybe this is what you agreed to play with. And, you apparently violated according to these rules that you've created with your organization that says that you cheated. But you can't then all of a sudden say, no, we're going to sue you. Well, you're suing yourself then. You're part of this group that created this. You created the rules and you got to play by it. Like, is that so hard? But anyways, I digress with that because it is a house of cards. And I think that, some of these things that the NCAA refused to address, whether it be paying players, benefits for players, health benefits, mental health benefits, all these things that we've seen kind of come to the fore in the NIL world were things that they had a 10, 15-year lead up as this O'Bannon case was going on to address, and they refused to address it. You could say the NCAA refused to address it, but it was the member schools that refused to address it, the ones that are now trying to fight against it. So, you saw Pat Fitzgerald continues to be mentioned as possible candidate. Northwestern's players were going to try and organize a union.
For
college athletes. Yeah. They fought that. And I don't know how that's going to even work anyways, because you're still dealing with something that is across state lines. Right? I mean, you got 50 states that have college sports and all operating. And we've seen it with how NIL rules were enacted in the first place once that settlement came in, right? I mean, states were trying to get ahead of each other and, one up one another. Oh, this is tax free. This is this. This is, I mean, it's the political scope on this is because the NCAA and the member schools refuse to address it is just out of control. And I don't know if you can put Pandora, back in the box. I don't know if the genie can go back in the bottle, but you got to figure like the powers. Izzo's talked about this a lot too. It's the adults. The adults have not figured this out, and they refuse to figure it out. And that is a trickle. It is a top down. That's not just an athletics thing. That starts at the presidential level and the board level that run these universities. They got to figure this out. They got to work together to figure this out because at this point, I'm not sure if college sports is going to exist in 15 more years. Post that.
I don't think so either.
I mean,
it's just
you're going to have the East Lansing Spartans versus the Columbus Buckeyes.
That's the only way it can happen now. Yeah. I said that. I remember we talked about it again. I was like saying, the biggest thing I think can happen is you're going to see sports programs loosely associated with schools, just in name only, because that's the only way it can be fair. Is going to have to treat it like a professional sport. Yeah.
But what good is it? What is the academic? If you were a university, what is the academic purpose? Everyone wants to talk about it, right? Well, and that's the thing is like everybody wants to talk about. Everyone wants to say, and athletic directors have said this for years. What is athletics? Presidents have said this for years. we consider athletics the front porch to the university. I have a friend who's knows some people down south, and with Alabama's football success, all these kids from all over the country started to come to Alabama to be part of the vibe because of the football success, because of all this. I'm from out of state, right? I came from Western Pennsylvania to Michigan State, not because of, the 90s success or anything, but the Big Ten football is a vibe, right? I mean, major college sports is a vibe. It's, especially when you want to get into my profession, I wanted to be somewhere where it wasn't just cutting your teeth in working your way up from small college level. I could have gone to Slippery Rock and covered Slippery Rock University 15, 20 minutes from my house. No desire to do that because I wanted to get somewhere else. But you take that away and you remove all the demarcations that we've talked about of how much it plays into the identity of the student body. And you're no longer in class with these kids. You're no longer riding the bus with these kids to and from projects. Where you're not sitting there. I mean, these are relationships that build and grow. I mean, I think of people that I knew that were athletes, that I got to cover, that I got to know off the court, off the field of play. I had classes with football players, classes with basketball.
Yeah, me too.
In fact,
me too.
I mentioned I had coaching basketball with Tom Izzo that first year, and Tony Banks was in that class. Tony Banks might
Tony
not
Banks,
but wow. He was also getting ready for the NFL draft. So I think Tom Izzo understood that. But you see what I'm saying? Like, all these things are what, whether you are a small private school like Northwestern and Duke, or a major school like Michigan State, Ohio State, 40, 50, 60,000 people. Like, these connections are what make and drive your college sports love.
True.
And you start taking those away and putting up the demarcation lines that, these people are different now. They're minor leaguers. Nobody's running to the Lansing Lugnuts and saying, oh man, I remember my time going to the Lansing Lugnuts games and all the times I spent with Vladdy Guerrero Jr. No, you didn't. They were sequestered away. I knew guys that played minor league ball. They spent all their time going to malls and playing cards in their off time when they weren't at the ball field, and they were at the ball field all the time. Like, the class is what connects you, right? All the shared experiences connect you to these athletes, to the experience that they're going through. And if you eliminate that, I don't know what it is. It's not college sports anymore.
Agreed. Yeah, agreed. So, Chris, we're going to get you out of here in this, man. I was thinking about this as you were talking. If you were to be a prognosticator, do you think Jonathan Smith will still be the head coach at the end of the football season?
Like I mentioned, there are so many different things. I would probably put it at about 75%. No.
Okay.
70 to 75% no, but I do think that there are parameters that come into play that, if you look at things from an overview and not just, a microscopic look at wins and losses, and is the team progressing the way that you want it to progress? From an overview, is it being funded the way it needs to be to win at the high level? Is he getting all the resources? Did he come in with expectations of different resources that were not made available? And the other side of it, what's the market like? Because there are a lot of major jobs out there, and a lot of high-end coaches that may not,
all over the place,
but they may not want to go into a situation where now you're on your third coach in 5 years, and you've the one time in 2023 you had donors pull money from players. Agents talk about that. Coaches' agents are talking about the fact that if you didn't fund this coach, then you're going to fund the next coach, or you're going to pull that money. I mean, there's a lot of things that I think, that when it comes to Jay Bott making a decision, that, I think Jay Bott and Kevin Guskowitz together have to kind of sit there and say, is Jonathan Smith the right guy for right now? Maybe not. Maybe it's another year. Maybe, you give him one more year, or maybe it's like, we know that he's not the right guy for the future, so we got to rip the Band-Aid off, but do we have the funds? I mean, there's a lot that goes into it, but from a resource standpoint, it's still Michigan State. They still got Donnie backing. And if they get on the right page, we've seen what they can do. It's just so much more difficult at this stage of college athletics than it was 10 years ago when D'Antonio was building what he built 10, 15 years ago. So I'd still put it, though, at 70%, just because I don't see them getting the 3 wins in the final 3 weeks to get to a bowl game. It's possible.
It would be possible.
It would go a long way to show what kind of a coach that he is and what kind of coach a lot of people nationally thought that they were getting. But again, you also have to do a deep dive, I think. And I said this before a lot of this, you have to do a deep dive into who you are as Michigan State and what you want to be. And there's going to be some tough conversations about that. Maybe Jonathan Smith is a short-term guy. Maybe he's not for much more than this year, but maybe he's got a chance to be like Tom Izzo. I think Izzo said this a couple times in the last few weeks that, he remembers back to his second and third year, that third year when he lost to U of D. And I think they lost to someone else early in the season, Temple maybe, and he thought he was going to get fired. They ended up winning the Big Ten and getting to the Sweet 16 that year. And that really was what laid the foundation. So things can happen. It's a different world than it was in 1996 or 97 when that was going on. But, that's the nature of athletics that we know. So, it can change in a heartbeat. You can change in a heartbeat. 1 minute you can be in the college football playoff. The next you can be 3-9.
Yeah.
Look, ask Penn State as they come in this weekend. They're just going through it right now.
Whew. My goodness, Penn State was a shock this year.
That's, natives get restless quickly. Now, James Franklin had 12 years. And, there's an MO of him not winning big games. But, that's
play big games.
That's right. That's right. Someone go find Felton Davis and ask and Brian Lewerke and ask them about the big games up there and how they knocked off that year with D'Antonio.
I remember that.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness.
Man. It was one of the wildest endings you can remember. Silence that place.
Yeah, I remember that game. Man. Yeah. Well, Chris, man, it was an honor to have you on our show.
Oh, I'm glad to join you guys.
Yes, thank you so much. You gave us a wealth of knowledge here. I felt like I was in a college professor class. You were just giving us so much knowledge here. I was like, oh wow.
I'll tell you what. I'll give you a shout. I'll give a shout out because I took a lot of the coach. Like I said, I had Izzo for coaching basketball. I had Tom Smith for coaching baseball. I did a lot of the PE classes, but the single best class that I took at Michigan State that has been the biggest benefit to my career was an English class taught by Professor Peter Levine, The History of Sport in America. And if I leave you with one thing, one of the things that we learned about in that class was a thing in the early 1900s in college football called tramp athletes. And I believe Fielding Yost at Michigan was one of them when he was going around playing for one school or going to one school in West Virginia, getting paid to go play for another, and then coming back to his school because nobody knew who anybody was at this point. But to think that the things that we are experiencing in the 2020s is any different than what was going on in the late 1800s and early 1900s in college football, everybody was not learning from the past. Especially the people in Congress who thought that this was going to be a Pollyanna solution to say, "Oh, just pay them. What could go wrong?" Welcome to 2020. Welcome to 2020, same as it was in 1898. So.
Well, it was a pleasure to have you on, Chris. You are definitely
thanks, guys.
Whenever you want to come back on, man, we love to have you on. Love to chop it up with you
anytime.
Yes,
this is fun.
Definitely fun.
Enjoy this.
Much appreciated.
Enjoy this.
All right. Well, that's a wrap. Cue the woodshed. Ken, the super cool Spartan. My brother Brian, the super mad Spartan. Our special guest, Mr. Chris Solari of the Detroit Free Press. And we are out.